Welcome back to another journey with Jesus through the Gospels. I'm Bishop Green, and I tell you, we're still on this journey, and I don't think this journey have an ending. So we're just going on and on and on with Jesus because Jesus doesn't have an ending. So we're going to stay on this journey, and I do want you to know I appreciate you for going along with me on this journey with Jesus through the Gospels. It's just so much that Jesus shares with us and that he did as we studied the four Gospels, that is Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And we see so many things in the between these four Gospels that it take a lifetime to, I guess, talk about all of them. So we just select some, certain ones, and then we just going to share some thoughts on it. And of course, this study is also meant to be interactive, to where you read it and you see what you come up with, maybe what the Lord may show you. I know I'm not covering every detail of these stories, so others got some good points. And so you look into it. Now, today we're going to be going over into the book of Luke, chapter 8. And we're going to be dealing with the scriptures, or we can say the passage of scriptures. It talks about Jesus going on a boat cruise with the disciples. He tells the disciples, he invites the disciples to go with him on a boat ride. And he tells the disciples, he said, let us go over to the other side. Now, I want us to pay close attention to the word he said, let us go over, because we're going to see in this passage of scripture where the disciples thought that they was going to go under. But just remember what Jesus said. Let us meaning him and the disciples, we all are going over to the other side. He didn't say we all going to go under. But anyway, you'll see that in the lesson today. And but anyway, they got into the boat, and they launched out, as we said, the scriptures say. And when Jesus is inviting us to follow him, and what we call step out with him or launch out, and we should, because he's trying to take us someplace. Maybe they had been in that one place too long. And sometimes we can get stuck in one place too long. And so we have to, what we call, launch out. The Lord wants us to move out into another area. I hate to say ministry, but it could also be that. And so they launched out, and when the boat started sailing, the Bible said, the story goes on to say that Jesus, he went down to the lower deck, and he laid his head on a pillar and went to sleep. But I want you to remember now, he's still on the boat, and he said, let us go over. Okay, and so while he was asleep, of course, the disciples was up. But while he was asleep, the story goes on to says a storm suddenly came down up on that boat, and along with it, some high winds. Now, what do we say about that? As long as we are with Jesus, we're on a mission with Jesus, we don't worry about the storms. But we do understand now sometimes the storms of life can come up, and it comes up to disrupt our life and get us in fear, get us off course or whatever. But remember, we're with Jesus. And so the storms came up. in the boat, and and also not only the storm, it was the rain, high wind, and the waves of the sea. So see, a storm can come in a lot of different ways to disrupt our life, or we might say rock our world somewhat, to do. But the boat began to also fill with water, and that's a terrible place to be in. You're out there on the boat, and water is coming in the boat. That's too hard to handle now. But anyway, the disciples got afraid. They feared. And the story said they went down and woke Jesus up. And the word they said is, Master, we are going to die. Now that's a contradiction all in itself, isn't it? Because first of all, when they said Master, they should have been, that was typically showing they got their faith in Jesus, but apparently they didn't. But then when they said, we are going to die, now that comes back to another topic of Jesus said, I'm the way, the truth, and the life. So how was that going to happen? But they believed. But now I don't want to point too much at these disciples, because they was in the middle of a storm. We get in the middle of a storm, and our world begin to shake, and sometimes fear will come in, and we're uncertain. And one thing we can say about these disciples, when the storm came, they did go to Jesus. And that's what some people fail to do. They think they can take on the storms all by themselves and deal with it. But they knew that this storm, this wind, the waves of the water, the boat rocking, the boat filling up with water, they knew that was too much for them. So they went to the right source. They just did it in the wrong way. They did it out of fear. And so when Jesus awake, or they woke him up, and Jesus asked them, where is your faith? Now I'm still including in this journey with Jesus, I'm still including the WWJD, and we know that to mean what would Jesus do? And so I want to show us in this story, what would Jesus do? So the first thing Jesus asked them, where's your faith? In other words, I'm on the boat with you. I told you, let us go on the other side, let us launch out. And so where's your faith? And so he went up and he rebuked, as the scriptures say, the storm. He rebuked the storm. And that's what Jesus was trying to teach the disciples in having faith, is that we may go through the storms of life, but we got to learn that we can, with faith now, by faith, that we can rebuke the storm. But that's why I believe Jesus asked him, where is your faith? Because he saw, first of all, he believed that they had they used their faith, they could have brought that storm to an end. So that's why he asked, where is your faith? He rebuked the storm, he rebuked the waves, the raging sea, and he spoke to both of them. And the words he said was, peace, be still. So Jesus was showing the disciples, by asking them, where is your faith? He's showing us, showing them that if you had the faith, you could have did this. In other words, and then the scripture goes on to say, after Jesus said, peace, be still, there was a calmness, peace. Everything ceased. In other words, no more storms, no more raging of the water. And so I think Jesus was showing them that we could have done, that they could have also rebuked that sea had they spoken to it. And so he's letting us know that we got to all operate in faith also. And so what the disciples, again, I'm going to go back and repeat that. What they forgot is when Jesus said, let us go over to the other side. See, he didn't say let us go under. He said let us go over. And so anytime we as disciples are following Jesus, and really by definition, that is what a disciple is a follower of Jesus. So if Jesus invites us to go over to the other side or follow him, whatever, then we don't have to worry about the storms. Before I close, I want to bring out something concerning the storm, just so we can kind of be looking at it from a different angle. If we looked at this storm real close, we have to conclude that was Satan that brought about that storm, because Jesus told the disciple, we're going over on the other side. And so we can conclude, and I can give you some examples, reasons why I believe Satan brought the storm. I really know he did, because remember when Jesus was baptized by John the Baptist in the Jordan River, and when Jesus come up out of that river, God spoke from heaven, and he said, this is my beloved son in whom I'm well pleased. And so that let me know right there that God did not send that storm, because had Jesus was going around rebuking his father, then God could never say, I'm well pleased with him, if that had been the case. So we know that Satan brought that storm, and we know that he'll bring storms in our lives. But what we need to do, what Jesus was trying to show the disciple, you could rebuke this storm. How are you going to do it? With your faith. You using your faith. You can rebuke these storms and bring some peace and calm in your life. So I hope that's something that you can get from that, and you read it and look into it and see what you come away with. So with that, I'm just going to say I'm closing, and thank you for joining me on this journey with Jesus through the gospel and the WWJD. And we'll see you on the next video. Thank you very much.